Welcome to Life Astrologer with me, Anna Isabel. I'm a psychological astrologer, and I'm delighted to welcome my first guest, who is William Wildblood, author of Earth is a School. So welcome, William.
Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you for having me on your show.
So I thought we would have a little look at your chart because I'm always curious to see the way in which charts marry up to what people are doing with themselves. And so I thought I'd have a look and see. And the first thing I would say is that your book is written in a very comprehensive way. I mean, you talk about all kinds of different aspects of the soul and the journey of the soul, etc. And the first thing, of course, that I see is that you are a Virgo with Mars in Virgo, and that, of course, what we associate with Virgo is the attention to detail. And
being a fusspot, you mean? I admit it.
I would say particular, being very particular, that everything is just so. And I think also what I appreciate your book is that somebody new to these concepts has a very good explanation. It's easy to follow. It's very clear. So I think that is very Virgo.
I do think it's important that you can get very lost in the spiritual world in complexity and detail and long metaphysical analysis of stuff. But it isn't like that. I mean, it can be like that, but the essentials are simple. And I think that's what all the great teachers that I've admired from the past have done. They've stuck to simplicity. And I've had certain teachers in my life, and they said people can get very lost in metaphysics, but the essential is simple.
That's also a very Virgo thing, because Virgo is about purity. It likes everything to be very, very simple and elegant. And I think that's, you've just said it, you like to keep things simple there, which is very nice.
Yes, but where's my moon?
Yeah, well, we haven't got there yet. Because actually I was, in this context, I was interested in a couple of other things, first and foremost, because this book is about spirituality and seeks to explore what that is. And lo and behold, you have a North Node in Sagittarius, the North Node showing the direction that we are taking in life and what we are meant to be doing. And of course, in Sagittarius, it's all about the search for meaning, seeking to understand. And so I think, again, this is a very, the title in itself, I know that there's a reason for it and a meaning to it, but I think it's also very apt for a North Node in Sagittarius, looking at life being all about exploring and learning in order to grow.
Well, I guess that's true, and I suppose I have traveled quite a bit as well. And isn't Sagittarius to do with travel to quite a large extent, as far as I am aware? So that would tie up as well.
Yes, it does, and I can see that some of your travel was really important for the development of your spirituality as well.
It was, yeah, it was certainly.
Yes. And then the second thing that I see here is a midheaven in Pisces, the midheaven showing something of vocation, and Pisces being about, again, spirituality and that doing something that's for the betterment of the soul. You see, I could have said the betterment of others, but I think for Pisces, we could look at Pisces as being very self-sacrificing, and wanting to be involved in healing, perhaps in a very practical, hands-on way, you know, such as nursing and working in healthcare, working in care professions, etc. And that's true. But I think that's on the surface of the care that Pisces seeks to give, because the other side of it is to do with being a shepherd of the soul. So this is where you would find your ministers, your priests, etc. And I think because it is the last sign of the zodiac, and because the process of the zodiac goes from physical incarnation, self-discovery, integration into relationship with other, integration into relationship with society, and Pisces is about the last part, which is about reconnecting the soul to source. So I think that there's something that's the ultimate goal of Pisces, is to help with the reconnection to source. And I think your book is definitely a step in that direction, don't you?
Not just my book, my life, really. My whole life has that aim, which is what the midheaven is supposed to indicate, isn't it? So
yes,
I remember when I first saw my chart, I thought, yes, that makes sense. That is me.
so
Although,
tell us then a little bit more about what you actually do besides writing.
well, what I do is I have a job, but that's not important. I'm not interested in talking about that. That's just a bread and butter thing. But the writing is, in a way, the accumulation of the life that I've led, because I began the spiritual path, as you might call it, rather grandly, but I don't know what else to call it, when I was about 22, as a result of meeting somebody and talking, and then deciding to live this kind of life dedicated to meditation and such like, and it branched out from there. And I had certain experiences as a result of this, some of which are mentioned in this book. This is well, it's either my fifth book or my third book, depending on how you look at it. It's my third book with the John Hunt Publishing. I've had a couple of others published elsewhere, but this book is describing things that were told to me by certain teachers that I had in the earlier part of my life. And there's a section at the end of the book which goes into that experience. These were discarnate spiritual teachers who spoke to me quite regularly for over 20 years. And they don't anymore, haven't done for 20 years now, but they did. And I learned a lot through that experience. And my books are the fruits of that, I would say.
And that's a really good example of something that I often tell my students about the midheaven. And people think about the midheaven as being about career. And I always say it's about vocation, because what we do for a living isn't always our vocation. Sometimes we're lucky, and it is, but not always. And so the vocation, really, it's that calling of the heart to do something and to cultivate it. And you've just articulated that rather beautifully.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't have a career. I have a job, but certainly isn't a career or a vocation. But the spiritual aspect of life it's what I think I was meant to do. And it's what I give my heart and soul to. But obviously you have to, especially if you have children, which I do too, you have to earn a living as well. But that's peripheral to my main interests, but by a long margin. So yes,
Yeah.
as I say, the books have come about after 40 years almost. In fact, yeah, more than 40 years, come to think of it, of being interested in spiritual matters and searching and going inwards, going outwards, both directions, because I think both directions are important. And therefore it's time, I suppose, to bring that out and into a form which perhaps can be of some help to other people.
Yes, indeed. And what I didn't say earlier when I was talking about Mars being in Virgo is that it's in the third house. which is all about writing. And you also have Pluto there, which I would think, deep writing. And this is certainly not an entertainment novel. It's something that's very deep.
My first book has a review on Amazon. My first book was called Meeting the Masters, and it was about my experience with these spiritual beings. There's a review on Amazon, 1-star review. It says, "I gave up with this. There's no plot to the story." But it wasn't meant to be a work of fiction. So I never really understood that. But I think somebody must have got the wrong end of the stick. And
I was going to say, yes, apparently the person didn't quite get that. There wasn't meant to be a plot.
It's not entertainment. I hope it's entertaining in part, but it's not entertainment, no.
No, it isn't. It's food for the soul, which is what we would hope a Pisces MC would provide in some way or other. Particularly also when you've got this North Node in Sagittarius. I was just curious about the fact that it's in the 6th house, as to whether do you feel that your writing is a service that you are providing?
Yes. I mean, it sounds a little grand, doesn't it? But it is, because everybody has to do something. We all have some mission in life. And if I have any mission, it is that. So it is a service that I'm providing. Whether it's a good service or not is for other people to judge. But yes, I do feel that. And of course, the service idea is tied up with Virgo too, isn't it? Because there is connection with Virgo, the 6th sign, and the 6th house. They're linked together. So it's all a part of a parcel, really, isn't it?
It is. It's just that with the North Node there, you can't dodge it. You kind of have to do it. So
yeah, the thing about the nodes, isn't the North Node supposed to represent what you're meant to do in this life, and the South Node perhaps where you're coming from in previous lives?
Yes, that's a very simple way of putting it. But
I like simplicity.
Exactly. But encompassed within the South Node are also your the resources and talents that you bring in, your past experience. So it's not just, and people make, I feel that it's an oversimplification to say that you have to kind of forget the past and just go towards the North, because to do that is to deny the experience that you've had and all the good things you've learned. So the nodes themselves, I feel, are about bringing forward what you've got, what you've learned, the best that you have, and then building on that by stretching, and you stretch in the opposite sign's direction. So I think that would mean, interestingly, your South Node is in Gemini, and it's also in the 12th house. And if we look at that, then what we're seeing here is the Gemini gift of communication, which very often comes through writing, echoed by your Mars in Virgo in the 3rd house. And then the 12th house is all about the spiritual stuff. So you've brought in, so for a moment I got lost there, thinking about your North Node in Sagittarius and the Gemini again, and thinking, where does 12 come in? But of course it's because it's opposite your 6th. So I was right. So there. It
is complicated. A chart is very complicated, isn't it?
I just lost my sense of direction for a second and questioned what I was saying, but I was right, of course. So that South Node then in the 12th suggests lifetimes which have already been dedicated to matters of spirituality and healing. And so it's perhaps then you're bringing that forward, and you're building on what you've already got. And this time you're using your communication skills perhaps to write, teach, because of course teaching is also part of that axis of Gemini Sagittarius. And so bringing forth the knowledge and the experience that you have and sharing it. I always say with Sagittarius, it's you know, teaching and preaching, and there it is. You know, you're not teaching directly, you're not preaching directly, but what you are doing is a kind of a combination, which is just sharing your experience.
You realize you should be charging me for this. You're giving me a free consultation. And
it's a pleasure.
I think also that you could tie up this south node in the 12th house with the Pisces midheaven, because they're saying similar things, aren't they?
Exactly. And that's the whole point. In a chart, you know, one of the rules of thumb is that if something comes up and is important, it comes up more than once. So you see things being reflected in different ways. And so what you get then is you get the building of a theme that emerges as being important. So yes, that's right.
Yes. So
tell us about your moon, because it's in Scorpio and it's conjunct Saturn. So,
well, when I always knew, everybody always knows their sun sign, don't they? And I first became interested in astrology around the time of do you remember the total solar eclipse in 1999, which was visible in England. I was in England at the time, living on the south coast, and so I became interested in astrology and astronomy, all in the same go, really. And so I thought, well, I've always been slightly interested in astrology, but I never really looked into it. Let me look up my chart, and so I did, and I saw that my moon was in Scorpio, conjunct Saturn. And I thought, oh yes, that actually makes a lot of sense, because here am I thinking, you know, I'm a Virgo, but I can see aspects of me are a Virgo, but other aspects of me are not like that at all. And this, well, I won't go into details about my character, but this did describe me. For instance, a small thing, the Moon-Saturn conjunction. I was shy as a young boy, and I think that's quite a typical thing when Saturn meets one of the luminaries, are they called, the sun and the moon? When it meets one of those, it can have quite a crushing effect on it, can't it? Especially when you're young and before you've built a firm foundation where you can use the positive aspects of Saturn. So this explained to me the shyness I'd felt as a young boy, which I've grown out of as you grow out of these things as you get older. And I like to think that I'm perhaps manifesting the more positive aspects of that conjunction, sort of kind of a certain emotional stability and so on. But also the intensity of the moon in Scorpio, that was again something that I felt I had. If I'd seen my moon was in Aries, for instance, I'd have thought astrology is a load of rubbish, because this isn't me at all. But it wasn't, and so I was encouraged to go further into it. And the more I looked at the chart, the more I could understand things about me, and then I could see new things about me that when I saw them in the chart, I thought, yes, that actually is actually true. So I found it very helpful.
Indeed. And I think, you know, when I'm looking at your moon, of course, it's your chart ruler as well, because you have Cancer rising.
Yeah.
And so there's something here about childhood, and that conjunction to Saturn, perhaps, you know, I wonder whether you were allowed to be a child, because as well, you've got this conjunction sitting in your 5th house, which is a house of self-expression and fun and creativity and play. What do you make of that? Do you feel that what is your relationship with creativity? Maybe that's the best question to ask.
Well, I had a poetic phase when I was at school, and that was my first experience of creativity, individual creativity. And I write now. I've been writing now for 10, 12 years. No, my childhood was fine. It was a normal childhood. I didn't feel particularly crushed in any way. I wasn't that close to my parents, but we were all happy enough. So it was I would guess my childhood was quite average, really. Nothing extreme in any sense. But I did feel quite alone, actually. But that's because ever since I was born, I had an awareness or a feeling that I'd come from somewhere else. And nobody else in my family shared that at all. They wouldn't have understood that. So although on one level, we were all, a perfectly normal, happy family, on another level, there was no real understanding, it seems to me. Not that I blame anybody for that, because that was just the nature of things.
No, but that would be the Saturn conjunction,
Mm-hmm.
that feeling of being alone. And that's where children often delight in talking about the things that interest them. And I think maybe that's what I was asking, were you able to be that child that delights in the things that interest them?
No, I wasn't. I probably, I wouldn't say took refuge, but I found a kind of fellow feeling in books. Mythology, for instance, Greek mythology. I used to love Greek and Norse mythology, and I had a couple of slightly mad aunts who would give me books for Christmas and birthday, because nobody in my family had any interest in my immediate family had any interest in literature or reading. But I had these two aunts who would feed me stuff, and so that's where I found my inner life, as it were. I mean, I did normal stuff. I played football, all the rest of it, but that was just outwardly. My inner joy came from reading.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's pretty descriptive then of this Moon Saturn conjunction in Scorpio. And I think this then is the makings of the, you were talking about spiritual journey, and you said perhaps it's too grand a term. I don't think it is, but maybe we could see life as a pilgrimage in itself, a life like yours in which you're seeking, maybe that's it's more of a pilgrimage. Just a thought.
Well, it is a pilgrimage, isn't it, really? It's you're not quite sure where you're going, but you're going somewhere, and you keep going there, and you have this vision ahead of you of where you should be aiming at, and that's what you're always moving towards, it seems to me. And you move towards it in different ways, and sometimes you can go quite quickly. Other times you even seem to going backwards, but all the while you have this ideal ahead of you and the ideal is a reality, because it's something you already know, and you're trying to, as it were, bring it into proper form. It's like there's a vague outline, and all the while you're trying to make that outline more concrete, to bring in the sharp edges and the colors and everything. It's like a vision on a hill which becomes more real as you approach the hill. And that's where you go.
And so we have your book as the fruits of one of your, or many of your explorations. And I will be sure to put a link to that in the description box, along with link to the other podcast, In the Light, Growing Your Soul, in which we are talking about this book in greater detail. William, thank you so much for joining us on Life Astrologer today.
Thank you very much for having me, Anna.
And thank you all for watching. Do feel free to ask questions or make comments. I always read them and reply. And until next time, do remember to subscribe. Goodbye.